What would you do if the entire plane judged you for being a bad mother only to find out the man sitting beside you owned the airline and everything was about to change? Flight 718, Denver to New York, 11:12 p.m. The first cry pierced the darkness just as the cabin lights dimmed, a whimper at first, then louder, sharper. Within seconds, the second baby joined in, a duet of distress, and just like that, the quiet of the red-eye flight shattered like glass. Amelia Carter's arms trembled as she tried to cradle both of her 5-month-old twins at once. Noah writhed in her left arm, face flushed and angry, Grace twisted in her right, her mouth open wide against the curve of Amelia's neck. The pacifiers had fallen to the floor during boarding, and now they were somewhere under the seat, unreachable. All around her, people were watching. Not with empathy, with annoyance. A man in a tailored suit pulled his noise-cancelling headphones tighter, jaw clenched. A woman across the aisle rolled her eyes and muttered something under her breath. No one offered help, not even a glance of understanding. Amelia's shirt clung to her skin, damp with sweat. She hadn't slept in 2 days, hadn't eaten properly in one. Her hands ached from holding the babies. Her back throbbed. She hadn't even managed to buckle her seatbelt before everything began to fall apart. Then came the voice. Sharp, cold, official. "Mom!" It cut through the noise. Amelia looked up. A flight attendant stood over her like a judge, ready to deliver a sentence. Grey Bob, clipboard in hand, eyes that had seen it all and forgiven none of it. "You need to control your children, now!" Amelia blinked, stunned. I'm trying." "They're teething, and no excuses," the attendant snapped. "This is a quiet flight." "People paid to sleep. If this continues, I'll have to report you to the captain." Amelia opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her face burned. Dozens of eyes stared. No one said a word. "I'm doing my best," she whispered. The woman leaned in, voice low and cutting. "Well, your best is ruining this flight." And with that, she turned and walked away. Amelia blinked back tears. Not here, she told herself. Not on this plane. Not in front of strangers. Then, ding. A soft chime overhead. A man in seat 4C had pressed his call button. No one had noticed him earlier. He was quiet. Hoodie, backpack at his feet. No watch, no laptop, the kind of man who liked to blend in. Now, he was watching, closely. A younger flight attendant approached him. "Yes, sir?" "I'd like to switch seats," he said simply, voice calm. That mother could use a hand. He didn't elaborate, didn't smile. He just stood, stepped into the aisle, and walked toward the crying, toward the judgment, toward the chaos everyone else avoided. Amelia didn't notice him at first. She was too focused on Noah, whose cries had reached siren pitch. Too focused on Grace, who had started to hiccup between screams. She was drowning. Then, a voice. Gentle, kind. Would it help if I held one of them? Startled, Amelia turned. He wasn't dressed like the other passengers. No blazer, no briefcase. Just a calm expression and two open hands. She hesitated. Every protective instinct screamed no. But her body couldn't go on much longer. Noah was slipping. "I can take him," the man offered again, softly. "Just for a bit." Her head nodded before her voice could catch up. He knelt down, scooped Noah into his arms with practiced ease, and began to gently rock him. No cooing. No baby talk, just calm, steady movements, as if the crying didn't bother him at all. Within moments, Noah's wails began to slow, then fade, then stop. Amelia stared, wide-eyed. "How did you do that?" The man looked at her and shrugged. "I didn't." He just needed a break. So did you. Amelia let out a long, shaky breath. She leaned back, not because she felt safe, but because she physically couldn't hold herself upright anymore. A moment passed, then another. The young flight attendant returned and did a double take.
"Oh, wow," she whispered. "That's impressive." But behind her, the older attendant appeared again, eyes narrow, arms crossed.
"Sir, passengers are not allowed to exchange seats mid-flight." "She didn't ask me to," the man replied, unfazed. "I offered. It's against policy." "Is it?" he asked, finally looking her in the eye. "Because I know the policy handbook. I helped write it." The attendant froze. Something in his tone, something in his posture. She stepped back without another word. Amelia looked between them, confused. The man turned to her with a soft smile. "I'm Julian," he said gently, rocking Noah. "I work in aviation." He said nothing else. She didn't ask, but the older attendant never came back. For the first time since the plane left the runway, the cabin was quiet. Amelia wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Her cheeks still burned with shame. But something had shifted. Not because the crying stopped, but because someone finally saw her and didn't look away. Noah had quieted. His tiny chest rose and fell against Julian's steady arms. Amelia stared, still unsure whether this was real. She'd boarded the flight prepared to survive, not to be rescued. Julian didn't look at her with pity. He didn't fuss or fidget. He just held her son as if it were the most natural thing in the world, as if this moment wasn't extraordinary at all. Grace, still nestled against Amelia's chest, began to calm to her cries softening, her limbs relaxing. Maybe it was the stillness in her brother, or maybe it was something else. The quiet strength of the man beside them seemed to ripple outward. Amelia took a slow breath. Her body still trembled, but for the first time since boarding, she didn't feel alone. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Julian glanced at her, warm but unreadable. "You don't have to thank me for something that should have happened a long time ago." She blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said, lowering his voice, "you shouldn't have had to wait this long for someone to help." That hit something in her. A pressure point she'd hidden for years. Julian adjusted Noah's blanket with surprising care, then looked around. The man in the suit now stared straight ahead, pretending none of this was happening. The woman across the aisle had turned her body toward the window. They didn't matter anymore. The younger flight attendant returned once more. This time she crouched beside them, not above. "Is he okay?" she asked, her tone gentler now. "He's fine," Julian answered. "Just needed some warmth." The attendant smiled softly. "And you, ma'am? Do you need anything?" Amelia blinked at her. She wasn't used to being asked that question. "I'm okay," she said, though her shoulders sagged with fatigue. The attendant nodded. "If you need anything else, just push the call button. I'll come." She disappeared into the aisle again, but this time she left behind a kind of stillness. Something had shifted in the air. Julian gently rocked Noah, who had now gone completely limp in sleep. His small fists were curled against Julian's hoodie, like he belonged there. "Do you fly often?" Amelia asked after a long pause, unsure why she was speaking at all. Julian chuckled lightly. "More than I want to." "Not always as a passenger, though." She gave him a puzzled look. He didn't explain. Not yet. The hum of the engine filled the silence between them. Amelia looked down at Grace. Her daughter's eyes were finally closed. "You have kids?" she asked cautiously. "I don't," Julian replied. "But I had a mother who once traveled with two of us. Alone, in worse conditions than this." Amelia's throat tightened. Was it like this for her too? He paused. "Worse, probably. People stared, whispered. No one ever offered to help. I remember her crying once, quietly, so we wouldn't see." Amelia turned her head away for a second. She felt the sting behind her eyes again. "I promised myself," Julian continued,
that if I ever saw someone in her shoes, I wouldn't stay quiet. Amelia looked at him again, this time differently. "Thank you," she repeated, firmer this time. Julian looked at her, then nodded as if to say, "I heard you the first time, but I know it means more now." They sat in silence for a while. The cabin dimmed further. Most passengers were sleeping. Seatbelts clicked, windows shut. It could have been any red-eye flight. But for Amelia, something profound was happening at 30,000 feet. A stranger was holding her child and somehow holding her together. She leaned back slightly, muscles aching from the tension of the day. She hadn't slept in over 48 hours, had barely eaten. She had left Denver with a diaper bag, 2 pacifiers, and a one-way ticket purchased with the last of her grocery money. She didn't expect comfort. She expected survival, yet here she was, breathing a little easier. Julian leaned forward slightly, checking Noah's breathing, adjusting the tiny hat on his head. "Looks like he's out for the count," he said. "I'm stunned," Amelia replied. "I've never seen him fall asleep with a stranger." "I don't think I'm a stranger anymore," Julian said, a half smile at his lips. And she believed him. Amelia looked down at the tray table in front of her. On it, a small business card rested, flipped face down. She turned it over slowly. Embossed lettering. Julian Westbrook, Executive Office, Westbrook Air. Her heart skipped. Westbrook Air. The airline. The one she was on. Her eyes widened. "You're with Westbrook?" she asked, stunned. Julian nodded. "I am." She paused, processing. "Are you a lawyer?" "PR." Julian shook his head. "I'm the CEO." Amelia didn't speak. She stared at him, then the baby in his arms. Then back to the card. All of it collided in her chest. The humiliation, the exhaustion, the help, the stillness, and now this. "You're the CEO?" she whispered. "Yes." "Why were you sitting back here?" "I like to see what it's like for real people," he said. "Without the name, without the suit, especially when the complaints start piling up." Amelia sat there stunned. "So this was a test?" "Not a test," Julian corrected. "An opportunity to observe. And today, I observed something I can't unsee." He looked toward the front of the plane, where the senior flight attendant had disappeared after her icy warning. "What she did to you, it's not acceptable." Amelia bit her lip. "I didn't mean to be in the middle of anything." "You weren't," Julian said. "You reacted like any mother would. And you shouldn't have been treated that way." She nodded, unsure what to say next. Julian continued, voice lower. "I won't ask anything of you, Amelia. But if you're open to it, I'd like to speak again, when we're not 30,000 feet in the air." She didn't answer right away. But she didn't say no. As the captain's voice crackled over the speaker, announcing their descent into New York, Amelia looked out the window, her heart full, her thoughts racing. Someone had seen her, and for the first time in a long time, they stayed. The wheels of Flight 710 screeched as they touched the runway. A gentle jolt, a hiss of compressed air. Passengers stirred. Seatbelts clicked open even before the plane reached the gate, but Amelia Carter stayed seated. Noah, now buckled into her extra infant harness, stirred softly in sleep. Grace, curled against her chest, had stopped crying hours ago. Both babies. Peaceful. And beside her sat the man who had changed everything. Julian Westbrook was quiet again, like he had been when she first saw him. Hoodie. Soft eyes, no ego. Only now she knew who he was. Not just a passenger, not just a kind stranger, but the CEO of the very airline she had been scolded on. And that changed something. He leaned forward and began to secure the baby bag under the seat with practiced care. He didn't ask. He just moved like someone who had carried things before. Not just luggage, but the weight of other people's burdens. Amelia turned toward him. So what happens now? Julian glanced around the cabin, lowered his voice. There'll be an internal review. What happened tonight isn't how we treat people, especially not mothers with infants. Amelia hesitated. Will she... the older flight attendant, will she lose her job? He didn't answer right away. That's not for me to decide alone, he said evenly. But yes, her behavior will be addressed. Officially. She nodded slowly. A part of her didn't want to be the cause of anyone's downfall. But a bigger part of her knew what had happened wasn't okay. Not for her. Not for anyone else who might sit where she sat someday. Julian leaned in a little closer. I'll make sure your experience is heard if you're willing. I'll think about it. That's more than fair. The plane finally came to a stop at gate B7. Overhead bins creaked open. Suitcases tumbled out into impatient hands. People rushed to stand, to reach, to exit. Amelia stayed seated, one hand gently patting Grace's back, the other adjusting Noah's blanket. Julian stood beside her, calm, still, waiting. Not a single passenger looked at her the way they had at takeoff. There was no irritation, no judgment, only distance. Caution, as if they now sensed they had missed something important, as if they knew. The man holding her child earlier wasn't just some helpful traveler. Amelia rose slowly. Her back ached, her knees felt unstable. But she didn't say a word. Julian reached up for the diaper bag without asking, slinging it over his shoulder like it was nothing. She looked up at him. You didn't have to get involved. No, he said quietly, but I should have sooner. They stepped off the plane into the terminal. Bright fluorescent lights. Polished tile floors. That unmistakable airport smell of coffee, fuel, and floor wax. Everything felt both surreal and painfully ordinary. Julian walked beside her, carrying the bag, not behind, not ahead. Beside her. They reached a quieter corner near an unused gate. Where are you headed? He asked. Amelia shifted Grace in her arms. Queens. My cousin has a small apartment. She said I could stay a few nights. If she doesn't change her mind. He looked at her, not with pity, but curiosity. You don't sound sure. She hasn't seen me in years. I sent her a message last week. She replied with a thumbs-up emoji. Amelia offered a small laugh. So, that's something. Julian chuckled softly. Sounds warm. It's better than the shelter waitlist I was on. There was a long pause. Then he asked more gently, why that flight? Why tonight? Amelia looked down at Grace. Then at Noah, sleeping again in the carrier strapped to her chest. I used to live in Denver. That's where the twins were born. Their father left when they were 6 weeks old. Julian didn't interrupt. I thought I could manage. Got a job at a grocery store. Moved into a one-bedroom, but rent kept going up. Daycare was impossible. I started losing hours. I was days away from eviction. She looked straight ahead, not at him. I had no family left in Colorado, no one to help, so I called my cousin in New York. She didn't say much, just said I could crash if I got there on my own. She inhaled deeply. I bought the cheapest one-way ticket I could find. And prayed. Julian nodded slowly. That's a lot to carry. Alone. I didn't have a choice. He paused. You shouldn't have had to. She didn't respond, but her eyes did. The way they glistened. The way they didn't flinch. It wasn't weakness. It was strength burned down to its last ember. They walked on, heading toward baggage claim. The space buzzed with activity-rattling carts, loudspeaker announcements, exhausted families reuniting. Julian stood beside her as she bounced gently on her toes, trying to keep Grace settled. Noah had stirred again. Her duffel bag came around the carousel,
threadbare and patched. Julian reached for it before she could move.
"You don't have to." "I know," he said, lifting it with one hand. "But I want to." She didn't argue. They stepped into the cool night air outside.
Yellow taxis lined up under the awning. The city stretched wide beyond the terminal. Julian opened the trunk, loaded her bag, then opened the back door for her. Amelia settled the babies into the seat, buckled them carefully, then turned to him.
"Thank you for everything," she said softly. He looked at her, steady. "I didn't get involved because of my title, Amelia. I got involved because what happened wasn't right, and because you mattered." Her breath caught. Julian reached into his pocket and tapped the card he'd placed in her bag earlier. "If your cousin's place doesn't work out, if you need anything, call. That number's real." She nodded slowly, then stepped into the cab.
He stood on the curb, hands in his pockets, watching until her taillights disappeared into the traffic. And for the first time in a long time, Amelia Carter didn't feel invisible. She had been seen by the one man no one expected to be watching. The taxi pulled to a slow stop in front of a narrow brownstone in Jackson Heights. Its bricks were chipped and darkened by years of wear. A dented mailbox hung crooked beside a door with peeling paint. The porch light flickered weakly, struggling against the night. Amelia Carter stepped out, her legs stiff, her arms aching. She cradled Grace in one arm, while Noah rested in a carrier pressed tightly against her chest. She looked up at the building, heart heavy, but hopeful if only slightly. The driver popped the trunk, and Amelia reached for her duffel bag. Before she could lift it, he stepped out to help. "You okay with this place?" he asked, not unkindly. "It's not permanent," she replied, more to herself than to him. The man nodded, then climbed back into his cab. The engine rumbled, headlights sweeping across the cracked sidewalk before fading into the distance. Alone now, Amelia approached the door and rang the bell twice. No answer. She rang again, longer this time. "Please be home." "Please not tonight." Finally, the door creaked open just enough to reveal a chain lock and a tired voice behind it. "Emma?" the woman said groggily. "It's Amelia," she corrected gently. "Vanessa? I texted from the plane." There was a pause, then the rattle of the chain being undone. "Yeah, figured it was you," Vanessa muttered. "Come in, just keep them quiet, okay?" "My roommate's got work early." Amelia nodded. She stepped inside with careful feet. The apartment was small and suffocating. The air hung thick with the smell of reheated takeout and old cigarettes. Laundry was piled on the floor. The sink was full. A cat hissed and darted under the couch. Vanessa, wearing an oversized t-shirt and mismatched socks, gestured toward a lumpy couch in the corner. "You can sleep there." "It folds out, kinda." Amelia looked at the couch. Fast food wrappers, a stained blanket, a single cushion sunken and torn. But she didn't complain. She simply said, "Thank you for letting me stay." Vanessa shrugged. "Just for a couple nights, okay? I wasn't really expecting you to show up so soon." "I understand." Amelia laid the diaper bag down beside the couch and carefully unwrapped Grace and Noah. She spread a clean blanket she had brought with her over the cushions and laid the babies side by side. Noah shifted but didn't wake. Grace whimpered, then pressed her face into her brother's shoulder. Somehow, they both stayed asleep. Amelia sank down beside them, legs crossed, arms wrapped around her knees. Her whole body ached, but she didn't let herself cry. This wasn't the bottom. But it wasn't much higher either. Vanessa had already disappeared into her room. The door closed. A muffled laugh from a TV leaked out a moment later. Amelia glanced around. No crib. No food in sight. Just her and her babies curled on a couch that smelled like old fries and disappointment. She leaned her head against the armrest and closed her eyes. "Just a few hours. That's all I need." Across the city,
In a quiet office overlooking Midtown, Julian Westbrook sat alone at his desk. The city lights reflected in the darkened windows behind him. He had changed into a fresh shirt, but hadn't gone home. His laptop glowed with a familiar document flight 718 passenger incident reports. His assistant had flagged 2 complaints. Both referenced the same senior flight attendant. Both mentioned a mother of twins who had been publicly shamed for something no mother could control. Julian scrolled past the boilerplate forms and found what he was really looking for. Name: Amelia Carter. Seat: 17B. He sat back, fingers steepled. She hadn't asked for anything, not help, not favors, not attention. She'd simply tried to survive a brutal night the best way she could, with dignity, silence, and shaking arms full of children. Julian wasn't proud of pulling her name from the manifest, but he also wasn't going to let her story become another forgotten footnote. He reached for his phone and dialed the number listed under her reservation. It rang once, then twice. "Hello?" Her voice was soft, uncertain. "Amelia, it's Julian from the flight." A pause. "Oh." "Hi. I hope this isn't intrusive," he said. "I asked for your contact through our passenger services team. I just wanted to check in." There was silence on the other end. Then, "I wasn't expecting that." "I understand," Julian said, "but I meant what I said. If you need anything, housing, support, just someone to help carry the weight, I want to help." Another pause. Then she replied, "I'm on my way to a church pantry in Brooklyn. They sometimes have diapers. That's today's plan." Julian stood, already reaching for his coat. "Can I meet you there?" "You don't have to," she said quickly. "I didn't say that to get anything." "I know," Julian replied gently, "but I want to." The next morning, Amelia woke on the edge of the couch, one arm asleep beneath her. Her neck was stiff, her shoulders sore. Grace lay on her chest, tiny fist tangled in her hair. Noah curled into the corner, blanketed by the last clean towel she had. The apartment was silent. Vanessa had already gone to work. Amelia sat up, rubbing her eyes. She reached for her phone. No new messages. Still no replies from the part-time jobs she had applied to 2 weeks ago. Still no follow-up from the housing application. But the twins had slept, and that was something. She packed a few diapers into her bag, strapped Grace into the carrier, and kissed Noah's head gently before slipping him into the second sling. Brooklyn wasn't close, but the church pantry opened at 10, and if she was early, maybe she'd get a can of formula. Maybe she'd get lucky, and maybe, just maybe, someone would show up. Someone who already had, someone who had seen her, and hadn't looked away. The church on 8th and Monroe didn't look like much. Its bricks were faded, its windows cloudy from years of weather and time. A simple sign out front read, "Free Pantry, Thursdays, 10 a.m. Below it, in black marker, someone had written, "Diapers, formula, canned goods, first come, first served." Amelia Carter stood outside, gently rocking the stroller she'd borrowed from a neighbor in Vanessa's building. The front wheel wobbled every few steps. The handle was loose, but it rolled. That morning, Noah and Grace had been fussy. No milk left, no clean bottles. She'd mashed half a banana with water and prayed their tiny stomachs would settle. Now, as she stepped through the church's side entrance, the air changed. It smelled like Lysol, canned peaches, and faint incense from Sunday services past. Inside, folding tables stretched across the fellowship hall. Volunteers moved quietly, placing canned soup, dry cereal, boxes of pasta into brown paper bags. In the far corner, one table held what Amelia needed most, baby supplies. A few other mothers were already there, all wearing the same expression she'd seen in the mirror lately. Tired, guarded, but still moving. She signed her name on a clipboard and waited. Then she saw him. Julian Westbrook. He stood near the coffee table at the back, holding 2 cups in cardboard sleeves. His hoodie was replaced by a soft grey coat, open at the collar.
No security, no assistance, just him?
Amelia blinked. "You actually came," she said, her voice barely audible over the soft murmur of the room. Julian smiled. "I told you I would." She walked slowly toward him, the stroller rattling with every uneven roll. He handed her a cup. "Figured you didn't get much sleep." "Not really," she said with a tired smile. But the twins did. He looked down into the stroller and gave a low whistle. "They're already bigger than they were last night." Amelia chuckled softly. "Feels like it sometimes." Julian's expression shifted. He wasn't just making small talk. He was watching her, really watching her the way someone might watch a sunrise after too many cloudy mornings. "I've been thinking," he said gently, "about what you said. That you bought that flight because it was the cheapest." She nodded. "Cheapest one way I could find, going far enough that I wouldn't turn back." "And now that you're here?" he asked. Amelia looked around, at the scuffed tile floors, the squeaky stroller, the quiet volunteers who had their own burdens but still showed up. "I'm figuring it out, one day at a time." Julian nodded thoughtfully, then looked her in the eye. "I'd like to make that a little easier, if you'll let me." Amelia stiffened. There it was again. An offer. She wasn't used to them. And the few she'd received in life always had fine print, hidden strings. "What kind of help?" "Temporary housing," Julian said. "Private. Clean, safe, covered for 6 months. Longer if needed." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Through Westbrook Air." "Through a foundation I run quietly," he said. "It's part of a pilot program for single parents in transition." "I don't publicize it, I just offer it." "And why me?" she asked, her voice sharper than she meant it to be. "Because you didn't ask," he replied. She looked down. Her throat tightened. "I'm not a charity case." "I know," Julian said simply. "You're a capable mother who needs a place to breathe. That's all." The silence between them stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was full of decision, of weight. Amelia thought of Vanessa's apartment, the broken futon, the smell, the text messages that went unanswered. She thought of the twins who needed more than she could give right now. Then she looked at Julian. No pressure, no sales pitch. "Just calm and choice. I'll try it," she said. Julian nodded once. "That's all I ask." The apartment was on a quiet street in Astoria. A walk-up brownstone. 2 floors, 4 units. Hers was on the second. When she stepped inside, her knees almost gave out. 2 bedrooms, a clean kitchen with counters that gleamed. A crib already set up. A basket of diapers, formula, even a stuffed bunny tucked into one corner. She put the babies down on a soft rug and stood frozen in the doorway. Julian stood nearby, hands in his pockets, watching. "It's yours," he said. "No rent, no catch, just space." Amelia turned slowly. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he replied. "Just promise me one thing." "What?" "That you'll let me check in now and then," he said. "Not as the CEO." "As me." She nodded slowly. Not out of politeness, but because something in her heart had already begun to believe him. A week later, a blog post surfaced, written by a fellow passenger from Flight 717. They described a crying baby, an overwhelmed mother, and the mysterious man in the hoodie who changed the entire tone of the cabin with one simple act of compassion. Amelia didn't know it had gone viral until Vanessa sent her a link with a casual message. "This is you, right?" "He's the CEO!" Amelia stared at the screen, then closed the laptop. Her hands shook not with fear, but something else. Uncertainty, exposure. Was she just part of a story now? A symbol? A headline? That night, Julian stopped by with groceries and 2 tiny board books for the twins. When she opened the door, her body language was different, stiff, guarded. "I saw the article," she said. "I didn't write it," he replied calmly. "But someone saw what I did, and now people know." She folded her arms. "They know about me." "No," he said gently. "They don't. They know what someone saw, but they don't know your story." "Only I do." She didn't speak. Julian took a slow breath. "I didn't help you for publicity, Amelia. I helped you because you reminded me of my mother, fierce, exhausted, and determined not to ask for anything she didn't earn. I saw you, and I couldn't forget it." Amelia stared at him. The fear, the pride, the protective wall, all pressing against each other. "And now?" she asked. "What am I to you now?" Julian stepped closer. "You're the strongest person I've met in years, and I'd like the chance to know you better, if you'll let me." The apartment had grown quieter lately, not because the twins cried less, though they did, but because something had shifted in Amelia. Peace had begun to settle into the walls. Not comfort, not yet, but peace. It had been 3 weeks since she moved in. 3 weeks since Julian Westbrook handed her keys to a place without judgment or expectation. 3 weeks since she stopped wondering when the rug would be pulled out from under her. And now something else was beginning to bloom. Not rescue, not obligation, but something unfamiliar and frighteningly real. Trust. Julian came by on a Wednesday. He didn't bring flowers. He brought soup, homemade, carrot ginger with a handwritten note tucked between 2 bottles of baby shampoo. No expectations, just warmth. Amelia had to smile when she read it. She let him in. Grace squealed when she saw him, tiny arms outstretched like she remembered. Noah was slower to react, but once Julian knelt and offered a plastic airplane, the boy clutched it like treasure. "You didn't have to cook," she said, closing the door behind him. "I didn't," Julian replied. "My housekeeper did. I just insisted on labeling it myself so I'd get the credit." Amelia laughed. The kind of laugh she hadn't let herself feel in months. She reheated the soup while the twins played with Julian in the living room. They rolled blocks back and forth. He made silly airplane noises. Grace clapped each time he got louder. He didn't seem like a CEO then. He seemed like a man who belonged on that rug. After they ate, Amelia sat across from him at the small kitchen table. Steam curled from their mugs. The apartment smelled like ginger, vanilla lotion, and the faint scent of diapers. "I read the blog post," she said finally. Julian nodded. "I figured. It's strange," she said, "being seen by so many strangers, and yet still feeling invisible most days." Julian didn't interrupt. "It's like they saw a moment, not me." The crying babies, the drama, the CEO twist. But not the mornings I spent rationing diapers, or the nights I held my breath, hoping I could afford formula tomorrow. "They didn't," he said quietly. "But I did." She looked at him, searching for cracks. Some flaw to make him less sincere, but there was none. "I've spent so long not needing anyone," she admitted. "I forgot what it felt like to want someone around, not because I need help, but because I want to be seen." Julian's voice dropped. "You're not the only one." That night after he left, she stood in the doorway a little longer than usual. Watching him walk down the street, coat tucked up to his neck, hands in his pockets. He didn't look back, but somehow she knew he would return. In the following weeks, they found a rhythm. Julian texted once every few days, never too much. Sometimes it was a link to a funny video. Sometimes a question about how the twins were sleeping. Sometimes a simple, "You holding up okay today?" He never asked to come over. Amelia always invited him. He showed up with groceries, with coloring books, with a warm smile and no agenda. And each time she let him in not just into the apartment, but into her world. One evening, as rain tapped softly against the windows, Amelia told him about her childhood.
about growing up in a house where love was earned, not given, where tears were weakness and independence was the only safe currency. Julian didn't offer pity. He just listened, the kind of listening that didn't need to fix anything. Just witness it. After a while, she asked, "Why me?" He looked up from where he was folding a onesie Grace had tossed onto the floor. "What do you mean? You meet people all the time. Probably donate to 10 families like mine every year. So why me?" Julian leaned back in his chair. "Because you weren't looking for help. You were surviving with dignity. And when I saw you, I saw something I hadn't felt in a long time." "What?" He smiled faintly. "Hope." One night, Julian called her from Washington, D.C. "I just finished a board meeting," he said, "and somehow I still keep thinking about that flight." Amelia was sitting on the couch, holding Grace as Noah snored softly nearby. "You still auditing your staff?" she teased. "No," he said. "I'm still thinking about a woman who didn't ask for help but changed me anyway, who reminded me what leadership really means." There was a pause. Then his voice softened. "When I get back, can I take you to dinner?" She didn't answer for a moment. Then quietly, "Yes." The night of their dinner, it rained again. Julian didn't bring flowers. He brought soup again and toy airplanes for the twins. They didn't go to a fancy restaurant. They stayed in. She heated leftovers. He read bedtime stories to the twins in funny voices. After the twins were asleep, Amelia walked him to the door. But this time, he didn't open it. He turned to her. "Amelia," he said softly, "I boarded that flight to investigate a complaint, to catch someone doing the wrong thing." She held her breath. "I left that flight thinking about you, not because you were broken, but because somehow, in the middle of chaos, you were still kind." She said nothing. "I don't want to help you anymore," Julian continued. "I want to stand beside you, not because you need me, but because I want to be there." Her throat tightened. "I'm not looking for someone to save me. I'm not here to save you," he said. "I'm here to walk with you." She didn't respond with words. She stepped forward and kissed him, not out of gratitude, out of something else. Something real. It started with a knock on the door, then 2 more the next week, followed by phone calls, emails, press inquiries, blog requests. The story had spread. A crying baby, a shamed mother, a mysterious man in a hoodie who turned out to be the CEO of a major airline. It was a headline dream. And Amelia Carter was at the center of it. Her face wasn't in the article, but people still guessed. The community pantry volunteers whispered. A mother at the park stared a second too long. Even Vanessa, who had barely returned her texts weeks ago, suddenly sent a selfie saying, "Can't believe I'm related to the woman from the flight." Amelia ignored it all. She didn't want attention. She wanted diapers, stability, warmth, not to be a symbol, not to be anyone's inspiration. Just a mother trying to make it through the day. But she couldn't stop the ripple. So she did what she always did. She kept moving forward. Julian showed up one evening holding a tray of takeout and a puzzled look. "I just read an op-ed calling me the silent savior CEO." He handed her the bag. "You want to change your number?" Amelia smirked. "Already did." They sat on the couch while the twins babbled nearby, Grace chewing on a rattle, Noah chasing the cat's tail like it was a mystery only he could solve. "Does this ever get to you?" she asked between bites. "The fame." "The pressure, the headlines?" Julian thought for a moment. "It used to. I used to think I had to keep proving something to my board, to the press, to the world. That if I didn't look like I was always in control, I'd be replaced." He looked at her. "But you reminded me that being in control doesn't mean being distant. It means being present." She looked down at her lap. "I didn't mean to be part of a headline. I just wanted to get to New York without falling apart." "And yet," he said gently,
You ended up teaching half the country about what dignity looks like under pressure. Amelia exhaled slowly. That's a lot to live up to. You don't have to live up to anything, he said. You just have to live. Weeks passed, and slowly, Amelia began to live again. She started part-time work at a non-profit 2 blocks from her apartment. They helped low-income parents navigate housing, job training, and school enrollment. She didn't need a resume. She just needed to speak from experience. And she did, with quiet fire. Noah and Grace got into daycare thanks to a scholarship fund quietly arranged by Julian's foundation. Their tiny backpacks waited by the door each morning. Their laughter echoed through the halls when they came home. The apartment, once a fragile gift, now felt like home. Not because it was big or beautiful, but because it held memories. Growth. Soft places to land. One afternoon, Amelia stood by the window, watching the twins nap on the rug. Julian was late for dinner board meeting, again. But her heart didn't twist like it used to when someone was late. She knew he'd show up, not as a savior, as someone who stayed. He arrived with wildflowers from a street vendor and 3 tiny airplane toys he'd picked up in an airport gift shop. They each get one, and you get the extra in case of emergency negotiations, he said, dropping the flowers into a water glass. Amelia took them, smiling. I've missed you. I missed this place, he replied. Every time I walk in, it feels like the rest of the world gets quieter. They sat on the floor, their backs against the couch, legs stretched across the rug. Julian leaned his head back and stared at the ceiling. My board thinks I should do a national ad campaign around that flight story. Brand myself as the compassionate CEO. Amelia groaned. Please tell me you said no. I did, he said. But not because I'm humble, because I'm selfish. She looked at him, amused. I don't want to share you with the world, he said. Not like that. I don't want you to be an anecdote or a media darling. I want you to be Amelia the woman who makes space feel like home. Her smile faltered. You really mean that, don't you? I haven't said a single thing to you that I didn't mean. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Outside, a siren passed. The city never slept. But in this moment, wrapped in the hum of something quietly powerful, Amelia realized she was no longer waiting for the other shoe to drop. She had found something real, not because it came wrapped in security, but because it came with honesty. Later that night, after the twins were asleep and the dishes were drying in the rack, Julian paused at the door. He turned back. You know, he said, I came into your life trying to help. Now, I just want to be part of it. Amelia didn't speak. She stepped forward and kissed him softly. Not out of gratitude, not out of need, but because she could, because she chose to. It was a Tuesday afternoon when it happened. Flight 427 from JFK to Chicago, a routine trip. Julian was speaking at a regional leadership conference, and Amelia decided to come along with the twins. It had taken months to reach the point where traveling didn't feel terrifying again. Months of therapy, of rest, of learning to breathe without bracing for impact. She still carried pacifiers in every pocket and extra diapers in her tote, but she no longer carried shame. The boarding area was chaotic. A baby was crying 2 gates down. A toddler threw a juice box across the floor. And in the midst of it all, a young mother stood near gate 11, bouncing her infant while the airline staff paged boarding groups. Her baby was red-faced, screaming. The mother, maybe 20, maybe younger, had that same look Amelia once wore like armor, exhausted, afraid, and already bracing for the worst. People around her sighed. One man put on headphones and turned his chair, and Amelia felt something move inside her. Not pity, not obligation, recognition. On the plane, the seats filled quickly. Amelia and the twins were in row 14. Julian sat across the aisle,
juggling Noah's toy dinosaur and Grace's juice pouch like a seasoned dad. They were used to travel now. Still fussy at takeoff, but calmer with a snack and a familiar voice. Then came the sound. The baby from the gate had started crying again. The young mother sat in row 15 directly behind Amelia. Her hands shook as she tried to mix formula mid-flight. Her voice cracked as she apologized to no one in particular. The flight attendant paused near her row, an irritated look on her face. She opened her mouth, about to say something, and Amelia stood up. "I've got this," she said gently, turning to the mother with a warm smile. Sometimes they just need a different voice. The attendant blinked, startled, then nodded and moved on. Amelia reached over the seat, holding out a rattle. "May I?" The young woman nodded, eyes wide with silent gratitude. Amelia gently lifted the baby, who startled in her arms, then slowly settled. She rocked softly, whispered a lullaby under her breath, one she had made up long ago on a sleepless night in Queens. Within minutes, the baby's cries softened. The plane grew quiet again. The mother stared at her, stunned. "How did you—" "I didn't," Amelia said. "They just know when someone's been there." She handed the baby back, tucked the blanket around her tiny feet. "You're doing great," she added. The girl's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you." Julian watched the entire thing in silence. When Amelia sat back down, Grace already asleep in her arms, he leaned across the aisle. "That was—" he began, then stopped. "I remember when it was me," she said softly. "And you." He smiled. "I do too." She turned to look out the window. The sky outside was streaked with gold and grey, the beginning of sunset, painting the clouds in watercolor shades. Amelia placed her hand gently over Julian's. "This is what it means to heal, isn't it?" she asked. "Not to forget what happened, but to turn around and offer your hand to the next person still stuck in it." Julian squeezed her fingers. "Exactly." The rest of the flight passed without incident. When they landed in Chicago, the young mother caught Amelia near the baggage claim. "I didn't get your name," she said, still holding her baby close. "Amelia." "I'm Rachel," she said. "You saved me back there." "No," Amelia said with a soft smile. "I just reminded you you're not alone." Rachel blinked back tears. "I won't forget it." "You don't have to," Amelia said. "Just pass it on." That night, at the hotel, Julian poured them each a glass of ginger tea and sat with Amelia on the couch in their suite. The twins were finally asleep, tangled in matching blankets and worn out after the excitement of flying. "I watched you today," Julian said, "and I saw someone who doesn't just survive anymore. You lead." Amelia leaned back, resting her head on his shoulder. "I never set out to be anyone's example." "You didn't have to," he replied. "You just chose kindness in the moment. That's what leadership really is." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I used to think my story ended when I got off that flight. That I was just lucky someone happened to sit beside me." Julian turned to her, eyebrows raised. "And now?" "Now I think that was just the first chapter. The moment someone handed me a lantern, and I decided to keep walking and light the way for others." He kissed her temple. "And you've been lighting the path ever since." Later that week, back in New York, Amelia returned to work at the nonprofit. She added a new session to the parenting workshops, Flying with Infants. 101 practical tips, how to pack light, what to say when you're being judged. But her real lesson was this: you matter, even when you feel invisible. Especially then. And the mothers listened, because she had been there. Because she spoke like someone who carried not just stories, but survival. And one day, sitting in the back of a community meeting, Amelia heard something remarkable. A woman stood up, holding her toddler on her hip. She said, "Someone once told me I wasn't alone. I believed her, and that's why I'm here today." Amelia smiled. The echo had begun. It had been 6 months since the flight.
since the moment Amelia Carter stepped onto a plane as a stranger and stepped off as something else entirely. She wasn't sure when it changed, when survival became stability, when kindness turned into companionship, when Julian became more than just the man who held her baby. But here they were, 6 months later, and she was still here. Still building, still rising. Julian arrived at her apartment on a Thursday evening. No fanfare, no headlines, just him, a canvas tote full of groceries, and that same gentle knock. Amelia opened the door, her sleeves rolled up, hair messy, a smear of mashed banana on her cheek. Julian grinned. "You look radiant." "I look like I've been negotiating with 2 dictators under 3 feet tall." He leaned in and kissed her temple. "Then I stand by my word." She stepped aside to let him in. Grace ran straight into his legs. Noah followed with a squeal and a toy truck in hand. Julian crouched to greet them both, his eyes softening the way they always did when he looked at her children. Their children, maybe not by blood, but by choice. Dinner was chaotic and full of laughter. After the twins fell asleep, one in his arms, the other curled beside Amelia on the couch, Julian helped tidy the dishes while she wiped down the table. When they finally sat down with tea in hand, the apartment was quiet. Too quiet. Julian shifted in his seat. "I've been thinking," he began. "That sounds dangerous," Amelia teased, sipping her tea. "I'm serious," he said, placing his cup down. "There's a company retreat next month. Aspen. 3 days. Strategy meetings, leadership sessions, networking events. It's important." She raised an eyebrow. "Sounds exhausting." "It is," he chuckled. "But this year, I want you there." She blinked. "You want me to fly to Aspen and sit in on corporate meetings?" "No," he said. "I want you to be by my side, as my partner, not just in private, but in public. I want the world to see you the way I do." Amelia stared at him. That word partner hung in the air like a question, like a promise. "Julian, I'm not a PR move." "I know. I'm not a polished executive wife with a business degree and a designer wardrobe." "I know." She hesitated. "People will talk. They already do," he said, "and they can keep talking. But what they don't get to do is define us." Amelia stood up, pacing slightly. "Do you really understand what this means? For you? For your image?" He rose too, not defensive, just steady. "Amelia, I didn't fall for you because you were convenient, or quiet, or good for optics. I fell for you because when everything was breaking, you stayed strong. Because you showed me what leadership really looks like, grace under fire. Grit without applause." She crossed her arms, unsure if she wanted to cry or laugh. "You want to bring me to Aspen? To introduce me as what?" He stepped closer. "As the woman I love." Her breath caught. "I didn't expect you to say that. I didn't expect to feel it," he said. "But I do. I don't want to keep you hidden in safe spaces. I want you in every room I walk into." She looked away, blinking fast. "Julian, I've spent years being invisible, and then suddenly, I was too visible." The crying mum, the charity case, the viral story. It's taken me months to feel human again. He reached out and gently touched her wrist. "I don't want to make you smaller or louder. I just want to walk with you through both." There was a long pause. Then, softly, Amelia asked, "Would I have to speak?" Julian smiled. "Only if you want to." "And I can wear flats?" "I would be offended if you didn't." She let out a shaky laugh, then sat back down, her hands folded in her lap. "I need time," she said. "To think, to feel ready," Julian nodded. "I'll wait." No pressure. Amelia looked at him. This man who once sat beside her quietly on a plane while the world turned away, who had offered help without ego, love without performance. She reached for his hand, or, "I'm scared," she admitted. "So am I," he said. but I'm more afraid of not trying. That night, after Julian left, Amelia stood by the window. The city moved below her in shimmering threads of light and sound, and she stood still, centered for once, not pulled in 1,000 directions. She thought of who she used to be. The woman crushed by expectation, silenced by exhaustion, afraid to take up space. She thought of the plane, the crying, the judgment, the redemption, and she whispered to the glass, "I am not who I was." 3 days later, she called Julian. "You'll need to tell me what to pack," she said, voice light but firm. "For Aspen?" "For Aspen." He didn't speak at first. Then, "Does this mean yes?" "It means I'm walking in with you." "Not behind, not beneath, beside," he exhaled. And smiled. The woman in seat 3A was calm. She wore soft navy slacks, low heels, and a cream blouse that didn't scream attention, but somehow commanded it anyway. Her hair was pulled back. A single bracelet adorned her wrist. She didn't fidget. She didn't hide. To anyone looking, she could have been a consultant, an executive assistant, maybe even a director. But she was none of those. She was Amelia Carter. And this time, she wasn't just boarding a plane. She was returning to the very sky that had once held her lowest moment now, with head high, hands steady, and a heart that had found its rhythm again. Julian sat beside her, reading through the final prep notes for his panel at the Aspen conference. Across the aisle, Grace and Noah were giggling over crackers and sticker books with a sitter Julian's company had flown in specially. Amelia looked around the cabin. She recognized the quiet hum of pre-flight routine. The rhythm of people stuffing carry-ons, adjusting belts, sighing at delays. She recognized the exhaustion, the quiet grief some people wore behind pressed collars and tight schedules. But what struck her most was that no one recognized her. She wasn't the mother with the screaming twins anymore. She was a woman with presence, stillness, and for once, she belonged here without apology. As the flight attendants walked through first class, a soft commotion broke out in the back. A baby had started crying, loud, persistent. The kind of cry that could shake a cabin before it even left the gate. Julian looked up from his notes. Amelia touched his arm. "It's okay." She stood up, smoothed her blouse, and quietly made her way down the aisle. Passengers peeked up from their devices, annoyed. A few rolled their eyes, adjusting headphones. One woman muttered, "Every time." Amelia reached row 19. A young mum sat there, clearly flustered, one bottle clutched in her hand, the other trying to bounce a red-faced baby against her shoulder. The flight attendant approached with a polite but firm expression. "Ma'am, if the baby continues crying during takeoff..." Amelia gently touched the attendant's arm. "I've got this." The attendant blinked. "I'm sorry, are you staff?" "No," Amelia said, offering a small smile. "Just someone who remembers." She knelt beside the mother. "Hi, I know it feels like everyone's watching, and it's too loud, and you're trying your best." "I've been there." The young mum looked at her, wide-eyed, tears clinging to her lashes. I don't know what else to do," she whispered. Amelia reached for the baby, hands steady, voice gentle. "May I?" The woman nodded. Amelia lifted the baby with practiced care, gently bouncing as she whispered softly, a melody only meant for that moment. Within seconds, the cries softened. The baby hiccuped, then sighed. The aisle grew quiet again. The passengers turned away, satisfied. Conversation resumed, headphones returned. But one woman, sitting across from them, watched Amelia carefully. Then, as if remembering something she couldn't place, she smiled to herself. Back in first class, Julian had watched the whole thing. When Amelia returned, He simply handed her her tea and said, "You were incredible." "She just needed a hand," Amelia replied, "and someone who didn't flinch." Julian looked at her not like a CEO watching a good PR moment, but like a man who had fallen in love with grace that didn't need an audience. "I think," he said softly, "you just made her believe in herself again." Amelia didn't reply right away. Then, "Someone once did that for me." He reached for her hand. "And look who you've become." The retreat in Aspen was a blur of meetings, panels, receptions. Julian gave a keynote about ethical leadership, and halfway through, he said something no one expected. "I learned the most about leadership not in a boardroom, but on a plane, watching someone care when no one else did." The audience applauded politely, but Amelia, sitting in the back with Grace asleep on her lap and Noah tracing airplanes in a coloring book, smiled wider than anyone in that room, because she knew exactly who he meant. 6 months later, Amelia joined the advisory board of Julian's foundation, not because he asked, because she had something to offer. Real experience, lived truth, not theory, but survival. She began leading workshops for new mothers, helping them find housing, navigate benefits, face courts and custody with courage. She didn't wear suits. She wore sweaters. She didn't speak from a podium. She sat in circles. And every time someone said, "I'm not sure I belong here," she'd answer, "Neither was I," until someone made space for me. 1 year to the day after that fateful flight, Amelia boarded another red-eye, this time alone. Not because she had to. Because she wanted to. She was headed to speak at a conference in Denver, her old city, her old life. As she settled into her seat, a flight attendant passed and paused. "You look familiar." Amelia smiled. "Just another passenger." But after the attendant walked away, the man beside her, a teacher on his way to visit family, said, "She's right. You do look familiar." Amelia looked out the window. "I used to be someone else," she said. "Now I'm just someone who keeps moving forward." The engines hummed to life. The runway lights stretched into the horizon. And as the plane lifted into the dark, quiet sky, Amelia Carterons, the woman everyone overlooked, rose with it. Stronger, seen, still rising. Sometimes it's not the grand gestures that change a life, it's the quiet ones. A stranger offering their arms when the world turns its back. A kind word spoken when shame feels loud. A choice to stay when it would have been easier to look away. Amelia's story reminds us that dignity doesn't always look polished. Sometimes it's tired, tear-streaked, and holding 2 crying babies in the middle of the night. But even then, it is worthy. We all have the power to restore someone's sense of worth, not by fixing everything, but by seeing them, by choosing compassion when it's inconvenient, by offering presence, not pity. And when we're the ones in need, we must also learn to receive, to accept kindness without shame, to believe that survival isn't weakness, it's a kind of wisdom earned the hard way. The real transformation isn't when life gets easier. It's when we stop hiding and start reaching forward, upward, and eventually outward. Because the truest strength is not in standing alone, but in becoming the person who turns around and helps someone else stand tall.